Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
Alright, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Why, Undertaker? Why?
Joe Giammatteo.
Yep, I am here. I'm dressed in Satan's red, and I'm ready to go.
Yes.
2 JR quotes tonight.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw is War at a time. But first, a quick update for our listeners. Next week is going to be our Christmas episode, so longtime listeners will know what to expect with that. Those of you that are new out there, our Christmas episode, usually a shorter episode. We have what we call our Mount Crushmores, which a lot of the people that are out there in the podcasting world talk about their Mount Rushmores, the top 4 things of any given subgenre or whatever. We here at Wrasslin Raw like to do Mount Crushmores because Crush was subpar, and therefore we only provide 3 greatest options for the topics that we choose. We like to sit down and talk about those, go over our Christmas gifts, and just relax into the season. That's happening next week, but the more exciting news, I'll let Ryan get into the details about it, but please, Ryan, I've been sitting on the edge of my seat. What did you find out?
I knew you would be, so I dug into the mystery behind both 1-800-COLLECT and 1010-321, both sponsoring the exact same segment. And it turns out I was right on both accounts. They are 2 separate services. 1-800-COLLECT was for making a collect call to someone within the United States. And 1010-321 was a long-distance service. So if you were unhappy with, say, your AT&T long distance in your home landline, you would dial 1010-321 and you would pay that to make long distance anywhere in the world. And they were both owned by the company MCI. That was the second point I was correct about. They are the same company.
It sounds like if you used either service, your dad would flip out no matter what because you'd have to pay top dollar for those.
And the collect call might have been from jail.
Yeah.
It also sounds like we don't really need to go any further. We can just wrap the episode on that. That's the most satisfying thing.
Yeah.
That's what everyone was tuning in for, I'm sure, this week.
No, it's more Brawl For All. It's that Brakkus tease I gave last week. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on July 6th, 1998. This Raw was recorded at the Bryce Jordan Center in State College, Pennsylvania, and features Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. We started off with a recap of last week's high points, the story of the rematch and how Kane became the biggest jobber in the history of the WWF. This was also a reminder that Kane can't sell a stunner for shit. Let's also keep in mind that The Undertaker stuck his nose into Stone Cold's business in the finish to that episode, too. We got a great view of the Bryce Jordan Center here at the start, what looked like a very enthusiastic crowd as the bell tolled, and The Undertaker marched his dead ass down to the ring. Taker wasn't mincing any words. He demanded a title shot right now. And up on the Titantron, Michael Cole was in the back, looking for Steve Austin to get some kind of response. Cole did end up finding Austin after about 6 or 7 doors of peeping in, but Austin immediately dismissed Cole like the pencil-necked geek that he is, opting to head towards the arena instead.
Mr. Austin!
And what a great scene, the glass breaking and Steve Austin walking with a purpose to meet Taker in the ring. That got interrupted, though, by a, wait just a damn minute! And a chorus of boos erupted as Vince McMahon came out from the entryway with a microphone. After diffusing the current situation, Vince made the match Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker versus Kane and Mankind at the upcoming fully loaded pay-per-view. Vince kept going with it. He said that he'll be naming the number one contender for the championship title later on tonight. Vince punctuated that declaration by flipping the bird to Stone Cold, who went running up the ramp after Vince and ended the segment. So, guys, I thought this was a great start to things. It seems like we've got the story of our episodes set here. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. Ryan, what'd you think of how we started the night off?
Yeah, to really start things off, before The Undertaker even comes down, they confirmed our hopes from last week. Jerry the King Lawler is already out here with JR, so it seems like that's going to be the trend moving forward, so that's great. To further illustrate that, we've got the pencil neck geek who gets completely blown by Stone Cold trying to get a word out of him. Stone Cold says, "Fuck you, idiot. I'm just going to go talk to the crowd and Undertaker myself. I don't need you as a fucking mouthpiece between us, you useless fuck." Stone Cold comes out. It's a great scene. Vince interrupts everyone like he likes to do, make sure the crowd hates him a little bit more, always stopping that action that they want to see. And it seems like the In Your House pay-per-view episodes, they're not good enough for title matches. So Austin isn't going to put up his belt there. He's going to be teaming up with The Undertaker, taking on Kane and Mankind. So seems like a fun enough tag team for that main event. But more importantly, we are going to learn who the real number one contender is. And he's going to let us know later tonight. All of this worked. As you said, it perfectly sets up what the story is for this week. And we just get to watch the rest of it play out now.
Yeah, you're right. It seems like this is a kind of a slow storytelling between Austin and Undertaker. They're going to get to that match eventually, it seems like, but we have to go through some of this other stuff. There is an In Your House before SummerSlam, so that's what we're getting. We're getting a tag team match to probably help build for that SummerSlam match between those two. So we'll see what happens there. This was a good start to the show. It's your hottest stars, Mr. McMahon, Steve Austin, Undertaker. We get a first glimpse of Vince doing his weird double-jointed middle finger that he gives, which was nice to see. So, yeah, this is just basically just set up for what we're going to see later in the show and what we're probably going to see for the next several weeks until at least SummerSlam, I would guess.
Yeah, and speaking of something that we are going to see for the next few weeks all the way up to SummerSlam, let's go into our first match of the night.
Hey, watch it. That's my career.
Wow.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
Savio Vega defeats Brakkus by points in the third round in a Brawl For All match. Brakkus! We're talking about Brakkus here, Joseph.
I wonder if his career will last past this match.
I'm pretty sure his career was over before this match.
Yeah.
I was really going to try to do that voice throughout all of it, but I don't think I can maintain that.
That's for the best.
So, I laughed at JR calling Brakkus a German Superman. I think the Nazi fuck brothers would call that the Ubermensch. Savio Vega looked a little more jacked here than the last time we saw him, a little more trimmed down. And it didn't take long for Savio to make Brakkus look like shit. We got a couple good replays of solid hits, but they weren't exactly reflected in the points count, so I'm not sure what the judges are watching or how they're scoring this, if they're even really trying. And that trend is what continued throughout. It looked like Brakkus got blown up trying to throw all of those haymakers, while Savio, on the other hand, limited himself to more measured, but therefore more accurate punches. There wasn't any kind of hesitation from ring announcer at the end, Tony Schimmel, in announcing Savio as the victor, and we quickly moved away from this. So, man, what a way for Brakkus to debut on Monday Night Raw. Instead of a push out of obscurity, all he got was a broken nose. Ryan, what'd you think of this?
This was terrible yet again, but I think this has to end his career, right? Like, we barely saw Brakkus. He came out and he looks like a juice to the max fucking meathead.
He looks like German Jim Hellwig.
enormous motherfucker, but immediately just gets his nose broken and and basically gets the shit kicked out of him. Savio beats the piss out of him in the ring. Like every round ended with fucking Brakkus' legs like Linguini, just like flobbling around, going back to the corner. So Savio, I'm sure, was happy coming out of this, but Brakkus' career began and ended right here in this Brawl For All match.
Yeah, it's funny, you guys. I think, Bartlett, you were the one who said his career was over before this even started. Dave Meltzer said the same thing. He was saying that this was Brakkus' Monday Night Raw debut, so which means it's pretty much over. If they're debuting him on this, he doesn't have a chance. But I'll admit, I loved seeing Street Fighter Savio just beat the living shit out of this steroid freak. I'm not sure how Brakkus was even able to stand after that second round. He had
his nose was all crooked and
yeah, he was stumbling everywhere. And you know what? I actually read online that Savio Vega claimed that Brakkus was originally not aware that this Brawl For All was a shoot fighting tournament and believed it was going to be a worked thing. So he was punished for thinking that.
Oh, man. Oh, shit. That makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be mentioned, how many careers does this tournament ruin? I mean, like, that was why I put that into the sound segment, because, like, I didn't remember Brakkus' career being ended by this, but we know of at least 2 others whose career.
At least,
so that's
I would say
3.
at least half, yeah.
So, yeah, at least 3 of these people's careers ruined by the Brawl For All.
Bart Gunn won the damn thing, and his career was ruined.
And his career was ruined by it, yeah. And then we've got Dr. Death, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there more? Maybe. I guess as we move forward, we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep an eye on it. That's a good call. That's another lens to view this through.
We'll be keeping an eye on it, all right.
Say goodbye to Brakkus, everybody. We're never going to get to see him again.
Yeah, give him the goodbye.
Hello and goodbye.
Give him the proper goodbye.
Goodbye.
There we go.
I salute thee, Brakkus. We hardly knew ye. All right, we're going to keep it going because this show was moving quickly. I felt so bad for you, Joe. Not a whole lot of storytelling going on in this episode. A lot of wrestling going on in this episode. Next up, we got a view of Ken Shamrock backstage shadowboxing in preparation for the next match. Ken Shamrock defeats Double J Jeff Jarrett with Tennessee Lee by disqualification in 4 minutes and 21 seconds. I guess Jarrett had asked for this match against Shamrock. That was sometime after losing to Shamrock in the King of the Ring tournament, which just goes to show that nobody else was asking for this match. First somewhat interesting thing that happened here is we got a look of Edge skulking around up in the audience. So there's that.
Stalking the last remaining member of Los Barricos.
He heard Savio was showing up. About halfway through the match here, I started wondering if Kenny maybe started sandbagging a little bit, because it sure as hell looked like he was. And we went back to having nothing interesting going on until King Mabel entered the ring to clothesline and then splash Shamrock. Judging by the way commentary was talking, it seems like Mabel may also be gunning for Shamrock as a former king of the ring, but the crowd didn't care any more than I did. I'm not even sure if these people knew who the hell Mabel was here. And
About Mo to introduce him.
Right, or Oscar. It would have been a lot better if Oscar wrapped his way down. This match ended the way it began, with 0 heat. Pennsylvania Joe, we got this match and the surprise appearance of King Mabel. What'd you think of it?
First off, it looks like Aldo Montoya's leftover pyro is not working properly because only one of the J's was lit up on Double J's pyro, so that's sad. Another thing I like about Tennessee Lee is that he walks around with a hanky to wipe that sweat from his brow, so I do
shows
like that.
Intelligence.
Yeah, but yeah, why this is a product that has been hot. It's been beating Nitro in the ratings since April after losing for 83 weeks. Why would you want to go back to 1995 and bring this useless piece of shit, King Mabel, back into the mix? Now, I know it's a one-night-only thing, but why would you even do that? It's just, it doesn't make sense. I know they're going for the whole King of the Ring angle, but like nobody, they literally like booed King Mabel out of the building and threw garbage at him during that event. So this was a bad idea.
Not only was Mabel a bad idea, really this whole match was, because I do enjoy Tennessee Lee just as much as the next guy, but Double J wrestling Shamrock, it's a downgrade for Shamrock, isn't it, at this point? He's going up against this bottom tier mid-carder. He's like just above a jobber at this point, Double J, sadly.
Yeah.
If you're trying to build up a guy like Shamrock, you just had him win King of the Ring. Why is this the match you put him with? I understand it's just leading to the King Mabel angle that, let's be serious, nobody was happy to see. But he is looking mighty viscera right now, though.
Yeah.
He's got the black mohawk and he was dressed in all black. So I know he's not viscera yet, but he's got the look going on for him. But thankfully, we've got a little bit before we got to deal with that. What a terrible way to end this match, though. Why would you, for even just one episode, build any type of feud between King Koopa and fucking Shamrock? It doesn't make any sense. Who was this selling any tickets to when they looked at the card and was like, oh, King Mabel's coming back. I better fucking show up for that one.
No, that's why it had to be a surprise, because if he was on the card, they wouldn't have bought the fucking tickets. And yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like 5 steps backwards for Shamrock here tonight.
Yeah, maybe it was because of his mic skills from last week. This was his punishment.
Punishment for the promos. All right, let's keep going to backstage with Michael Cole. He was there with Ken Shamrock, who may have had every rib in his body broken by that splash. Shamrock punked out Michael Cole, which was to be expected, and then challenged Mabel to a match later on tonight. So great. That's all we got in this segment, so we quickly headed into our next match. Bradshaw versus Vader ends in a no contest in 2 minutes. Just right off the top here, Ryan, I don't suppose we have an update on Vader's current status, do we?
You would be lucky because he just called in and updated us on things. Would you like to hear that?
He called in through 10-10-3-2-1, I believe.
He did.
Yes.
He heard us talking about 10-10-3-2-1 earlier, and he said, I'm going to put a call in.
Connect them, yeah.
I'm going to pipe him in right now.
Maybe Vader time's over. I'm nothing but a big piece of shit. Big fat piece of shit.
Yeah.
Thanks for that update, Vader.
He spent a lot of money on that call.
Yeah, but he also saved a lot of money calling from the afterlife using 10-10-3-2-1.
That's a hefty bill, typically.
That's the longest of distances. All right, so I can't even work up an ounce of fake enthusiasm for this. On a positive note, it does look like Bradshaw may have permanently ditched the assless chaps. At one point, it looked like both of these guys gave up on having a match and just decided to get stiff with each other in the corner. Things got a little more interesting when Kane and Mankind came down to take out both Bradshaw and Vader. That's what drew the no contest. And that's it. We got a little hellfire and brimstone, but no further comment from anybody as this match ended. This was our third match of the night, and I have to say, guys, at this point in the episode, it felt like the magic word of the night was going to be anticlimactic.
Bit of a filler.
Things have been happening so far, but none of them have been interesting. So, Ryan, what did you think of it?
I completely agree with that. I don't really have much to add. The match wasn't anything to speak of, really. I was shocked when Kane and Mankind come down. Still, 8 days later now, there's still no mention of the Hell in the Cell. Right now, Mankind shows up, he's in the ring, and we don't even hear about it. Vader gets shown to be the fat, worthless piece of shit that he is, as Kane tombstones him with ease. No fight back on that one. Kane and Mankind come in here and clean house, but this was a waste of time.
I've identified the problem, guys. It's just too much wrestling. That's what it is.
That's it.
The one thing I noticed here right off the bat was Bradshaw won his Brawl For All match last week, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this means they're still making these guys work wrestling matches while they are currently in the Brawl For All, which is odd. So Bradshaw's doing both because he didn't lose. He still has another Brawl For All match at some point soon. And Ryan, you mentioned, you're right. There's no mention of this Hell in a Cell, but I guess going back to the beginning of this episode, the fact that they said that Mankind is going to be in a tag team match in a couple of weeks, like, I know it's a tag team match, but I'm not so sure I want Mankind wrestling at all for several weeks after that. But it's nice to see that Kane and Mankind interrupted this because, like, who the hell wants to see a Vader match right now? So it was a match, a filler match, but at the same time, it was building up to something with the whole Kane and Mankind tag team.
Yeah, and thank you for being generous with that, Joe, because I was unable to be. It's just, and you're right. It is a decent story, like for the bigger picture moving forward. But man, it didn't feel like it here. Maybe because of the black hole of talent that was in the ring for this match, namely Vader. Hey, speaking of black holes of talent, let's go to our next match. The Disciples of Apocalypse, with Paul Ellering, defeat the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher, by pinfall in 3 minutes and 44 seconds. So this was at 30 minutes into the episode, and we had already burned through half of the match card with this match, and I was just kind of really confused as to the pacing. I was at this point, I was really expecting we were going to have like a half-hour-long non-wrestling segment somewhere towards the end, and we were going to get a lot of quality storytelling there. It doesn't happen, but here in the match, the Headbangers came out and poured hot candle wax on themselves. So there's that.
That'll get you over.
Yeah, I'm sure. Paul Ellering joined commentary, and when asked why Ellering had decided to back the DOA over the Legion of Doom, Ellering responded by saying that it doesn't take a genius to know which way the wind is blowing, which I thought was hilarious given the enormous pile of shit that is the DOA. You'll always know when you're downwind from them. Paul more or less talked through this entire match, and while I'm not making a direct one-to-one comparison here, but I was getting some Jackal vibes here because it really felt like he just wouldn't shut up about some really inane bullshit regarding a team that nobody fucking cares about. There are certain parallels there. That's all I've got. I fucking hated this. Joe, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, it's horrible. We all hate the DOA, of course, and just to show you how much I don't give a shit about the Headbangers anymore either, is that I accidentally put them in my notes as the Head Shrinkers instead of the Headbangers, and I just realized it now, just reading it back here. And Paul Ellering, man, I hope he got paid a lot of money because this is not a good position for him to be in. He's cutting these terrible promos on commentary, which, like you said, is Jackal vibes, and we're not going to believe anything he says about DOA because DOA has been a huge problem this whole year. Are we supposed to believe that the DOA is more dangerous now that they have a manager? Like that is just, why would you even put DOA on life support at this point? They don't deserve it. They didn't earn it. Legion of Doom, I can understand because they were Hall of Fame legends at one point. It's like, okay, well, we can put them on life support. But DOA, what the fuck? Nobody cares about them and never has.
DOA has never sold a single ticket in their life. I couldn't agree anymore. The moment DOA steps out in a match, I'm already halfway out of the room already. JR informs us that the Headbangers have been on a roll lately. That must have been on Superstars because
had to be.
They've been jobber of the week for like the last 25 years, it seems, every time they show up in the ring. Paul Ellering here on commentary shows up looking like the fucking bad guy from Sonic, Dr. Robotnik.
Yeah.
And just blathers the entire fucking time, non-stop. Like, he barely took a fucking breath through this match. Just drowned the whole thing out. Not like I care. I had no intentions of paying attention to DOA, and he's trying to set up the 7th or 8th feud between them and LOD. So much about this I don't give a fuck about, and of course, it ended with the Headbangers jobbing out to the dumb fuck brothers.
Yep.
This episode is not shaping up very good here at about the halfway point.
Yep. Let's keep going. Get the fuck away from that to the Skittles Slam of the Week. That was interesting. You got a replay of
Skittles.
Yeah, Austin dishing out stunners during the finish of last week's episode. So that was cool.
Unlike those shitty MCI products, Skittles are still around.
Yeah, very true. And then we went straight into our next match. D'Lo Brown with the Godfather defeats Terry Funk by pinfall in 3 minutes and 48 seconds. D'Lo's got that chest protector on still. It's going to be there for a while. The camera focused on it strongly as he was coming down the ramp. And I was enjoying this. I was watching D'Lo, just sitting into the comfort that is watching D'Lo Brown wrestle. That's up until Terry Funk did the acai moonsault from the ropes onto D'Lo at the outside, and Funk cracked his shins off the crowd barrier there. God damn, that had to fucking hurt. I can't even imagine.
Tough as shoe leather, that motherfucker.
I damn near cry whenever I bark my shins off the coffee table, let alone what the fuck this guy just did. This finished with D'Lo hitting the lowdown 3/4 of the way across the ring. I don't care what anybody says. He nails that cleanly every fucking time. One of the many reasons why D'Lo Brown is impressive as hell.
And for a big man,
yeah,
he's getting 3/4 of the way across that fucking ring. Very impressive.
Full tuck, full extension. He does it amazingly. But then the Undertaker came out just as the bell rang. The Undertaker planted the Godfather, and then D'Lo with JR shouting, "Who's your daddy, D'Lo?" Wasn't over there, though. Terry Funk ended up getting some, too. I laughed when JR yelled, "He can't defend himself!"
Like he just went into a fucking elderly home or something. Like Terry wasn't just involved in a wrestling match.
And that's where this ended. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. I'll start by saying it was great to see D'Lo in action. He is always entertaining, and I will never pass up an opportunity to put over D'Lo Brown. Terry Funk didn't look too horrible in this, and I will just leave that there. But the one thing that I was really happy to note is that this was the first time this evening that I felt a little electricity out of commentary. First time they were excited about something. So, Ryan, what'd you have on this match and its aftermath?
Best match of the night so far. Let's be honest here.
Yep.
I thought everyone put on a pretty good show. They point out Terry Funk is 50-some years old, but he's still delivering here, especially cracking his shins off that crowd barrier. Doesn't give a fuck. Everything here really worked. We've got D'Lo coming out. We got the chest protector gimmick thing working right now. That's going to be around for a while. And at one point, we got some hard chops to the chest exchange, and we got woos out of the crowd. I don't feel... I know that became a really huge thing, especially like moving forward, but it seemed like back then, this is one of the first times we've really gotten that. Can you correct me on that? Or
yeah, it was a thing. They've always done that for Flair and for basically everybody that does it now. Yeah. But it's more prominent now, but they were doing it a little bit back then, yeah.
Okay. So that was fun to see. And I had to point out the lowdown out of D'Lo. That was just impressive how far, even commentary, they set it up for him. Like, I think the King was like, oh no, there's no way he could hit it from there. And boom, he did. Undertaker then comes out, cleans house. Luckily though, for Terry Funk, he did keep his shoes on this week when he got chokeslam.
Yeah, D'Lo performed as expected. He is a superstar of the Attitude Era that kind of flew under the radar, and it's nice to watch him work again. And Terry Funk, what shocked me was he got the jobber treatment here. He was standing in the ring when they came back from commercial like a jobber with his name across the screen. And I don't know. That was just really surprising to me to see that. So we got, as far as Terry Funk's WWF run here in 98, 97, 98, like we got a couple months of Chainsaw Charlie. Now we get Terry Funk. We had him in a tag team with Two Cold Scorpio. Like, it's just not as impressive as I want to remember. I've enjoyed watching him, but I feel like in my head, I remember it being a lot more impressive back when it was actually happening. But now that we're rewatching it, it's just like, he didn't really stand out. He doesn't really stand out in all this.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way that they're booking him, obviously. But I'm a little surprised by that.
And I think that's partly he is 54 years old here, and I feel like it was more just bringing him back to give him a paycheck. Because at this point he's helping out and with developing a lot of these people, and he's got his fingers into the company in different ways. And I feel like this was just, hey, we'll give him a paycheck for 6 months or whatever, and he'll be happy.
Yeah, it's just weird because I remember like 15-year-old brain was like, okay, I don't know who this guy is. And then whenever he shows up, I'm like, okay, this guy's fucking amazing. Like, he's awesome. But watching it back now, it's like, yeah, that 6-month time period is really all he had. Like, it's a little surprising.
Yeah, I feel that same way too. I guess maybe back in the day as teenagers, it was that much easier for commentary to like build up that mythos of Terry Funk for us and really sell us on how awesome he was. Not to say that he isn't, but looking back on it as adults, it's just one of those things that just doesn't hold up over time.
Yeah.
All right. Vince McMahon came out next with the expectation that he would be announcing the number one contender for the title. And I just wanted to take a minute here to throw in that this is something that I always really enjoyed. It doesn't always happen, but like this is one of the reasons why I like brackets and tournaments. It's one of those things that AEW promised early on and then completely fucking failed to deliver early on. The idea that you can have contenders and the number one spot can change as a stipulation to a match, also as a result of like a win-loss record. It gives an added layer of depth. It can make normal matches actually have stakes. Just the idea that a person can rack up wins and get to that number one contender spot. It really helps with the suspension of disbelief for me. So I really liked that they were using that as like a plot point here to get their story over.
It seems like there's more to it than just the crowd really cheers for this guy.
Yeah. And also with the first like 5 years of Raw, that number one, they barely ever talked about the number one contender spot to begin with. But on top of that, it was just always arbitrary. It was just some random chuckle fuck that wound up being the number one contender for no clear reason. They were dishing out championship matches left and right because they didn't have anything else better to do.
Maybe it makes it easier now, though, because you have a guy who is clearly like the biggest star in all of wrestling. So it's a little easier to have that, dangle that carrot. Like, who wants this number one contender spot to go up and work with this guy?
Yeah, we have the Undertaker. We've had him on deck for what feels like forever now. He's always ready to go to be a number one contender. But while he's doing that, we're in the middle of developing other number one contenders. The Rock. In theory, right now, Ken Shamrock could be a number one contender at some point.
For the NWA belt off of fucking Double J.
Dan Severn.
All right, back in the ring here. First order of business for Vince was to introduce Mankind, the first of supposedly several individuals. And here was the first that anybody had talked at all about what happened at the King of the Ring. JR and the King gave us a few lines about what Mankind had endured. Kane was called out next. He was dressed in Satan's red, as JR put it. And I loved that. I'm so glad you used it at the top of the show. That was just such a great line. The Undertaker's presence was requested next, and that rounded out the individuals that Vince wanted to dangle this particular carrot in front of. He started out with Mankind, and I have to say, I think Vince's thank you to Mick for what he did at the King of the Ring was absolutely genuine. He dropped that
seemed it.
Yeah. He dropped the Mr. McMahon tone. He sounded very legitimately thankful for the sacrifices Mick made during that match, and that touched me a little bit. Crowd was unfortunately ambivalent about Mankind, but the booing amped up when Vince moved on to Kane. I popped when Vince called Kane one of the stupidest men he'd ever met in his life for giving Austin that title shot on Raw last week. And of course, Vince saved the most amount of contempt for The Undertaker. But the solution here was to announce that there is going to be a triple threat match for the number one contender position. It's going to be happening later on tonight. And with that news, I died a little inside as this segment ended. Like we've recently said, silver linings, if there's going to be a triple threat, at least it's these guys in it. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm excited for a triple threat. And there we have it. The main event is set for the evening. Thank God it didn't end up being Ken Shamrock versus Mabel. Joe, what'd you end up thinking of the way the story is progressing here?
I think for me, with this segment, you basically highlighted the couple things that were good. Vince seemed like he was genuinely thanking Mick Foley for what he did at King of the Ring, and then calling Kane the stupidest person he's ever met. They're basically turning Kane into a babyface over the past few weeks here. But other than that, I didn't really like this segment. I feel like this just took too long. Vince basically takes the long way to tell us that this is going to be a triple threat match tonight for number one contender, basically throwing his weight around like any boss would do. I don't know. I feel like this segment just dragged on too long, and whatever's going on at the Bryce Jordan Center, the walk to the gorilla position must be really difficult in this arena, because it seemed like all three guys like took forever to come out there. Like, he announced them and then we're just like waiting and waiting. I was expecting some kind of swerve with the way they were waiting like that, but then they just walked out like normal. So I thought that was a bit odd.
Joe, if you remember from the beginning of the episode, they followed Stone Cold up, and it was awkward.
Yeah.
It was like a double stairs that they had to get through, and so I think that was what was playing into it. I agree with you that this wasn't the strongest segment. Like, when McMahon said he was going to have this number one contender ceremony or whatever the fuck it is, I expected there to be someone maybe that we didn't expect to be in here, but it just ended up being Kane, The Undertaker, and Mankind, which is the three people we've been talking about as the number one contenders for the last 4 or 5 months. That was a little anticlimactic. I did enjoy Vince's, and I think that shows that it is what it was, because all three of us watched that and said it felt like McMahon was actually thanking Mankind there. He really didn't have any criticism for him.
Right.
He basically said, I thank you for what you've done for our company, but is that enough? Then he goes on the Kane and he calls him the dumbest motherfucker he's ever met. And then Undertaker, you're the vicious, vile Satan of evil. He's going into him. So like Mankind was the only one that he only told him thank you. So that was cool. But there was one thing that stuck out here to me, and I wrote it down in my notes because I wondered if there was a costume change or so. Kane out here still has on the same double-armed outfit that he had in the First Blood match, which will play into something that happens later as to why he would need both sleeves, as to not give anything away. So that stuck out to me here, and we get an answer for why in the final segment. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, good catch there. I didn't even think of that. I didn't think because I was so excited for our next match.
Hey, watch it. That's my career.
Darren Drozdov versus Road Warrior Hawk ends in a draw in the third round in a Brawl For All match. I don't know why, but I was really uneasy about this going into it. Draws looked horrible in this. You can tell he's not a fighter at all.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you can easily see that Hawk has thrown a punch or two in his life. Not that that really carried him well throughout this, but he was at least measured in what he was doing, like Savio earlier. Things turned around a little bit in the second round. Not sure what exactly happened, but it was almost like Hawk ran out of steam and was just dropping his guard too much. We got a zoomed in view of Hawk's bloody nose. That's 2 broken noses in the Brawl For All tonight. You could see him sucking wind there. And then the only part of this that I actually enjoyed is when they announced the draw. JR said that's like kissing your sister. That's it. Joe, that's another Brawl For All match in the record books. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, Draws is horrible at covering up, and Hawk looks gassed after the first round, so this was not very good. And they never explained, so what happens with the draw? Does that mean they're both out? Did they explain that?
How does that work in a tournament?
They still haven't called it a tournament. That's the thing.
No, they didn't explain shit, so who knows what's going to happen there. But a lot of times, many times when I'm bored, I just think of random shit. And I was wondering if they needed any sort of special permission from USA Network to do this, because I'm not sure what kind of rules there were for boxing on TV back then, but I just wonder if there was some kind of, because don't you need...
It's not a sanctioned boxing match, though.
Plus, it's not actually boxing. It's a hybrid.
Yeah, it would be considered like exhibition
It's like a
matches.
tough man contest type thing. But I was just wondering, I was like, I wonder if they had to get some sort of permission, just because, like, I don't know if you need some kind of like license to do a tough man style contest on TV.
I think if anything that they would need would just be USA's permission to say, hey, we don't know what will happen here. Someone's nose might be broken, so there's blood, whatever, just to let USA know.
Whenever you said that, the first thing I thought of wasn't USA, it was the state sports commissions.
If it's an exhibition match, it's like having a sparring match, basically.
Depending on what state they're in, though, there's wrestling commissions, there's boxing commissions, it changes everywhere as they travel around. So that is a pretty legitimate concern, I would think, because it's okay in, say, Pennsylvania, for example, or Ohio last week, that doesn't mean it's going to be okay in New York next week.
But whatever, I was bored, so I just thought of that randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was terrible, like them all. Two guys that clearly have never boxed in there with each other. Puke, he was throwing his punches so hard that twice he spun himself around when he missed.
Yeah.
Clearly never threw a real punch at anyone. And because of that, when he actually connected, it looked like he maybe broke his wrist draws. Yeah. So we got a broken wrist, two broken noses tonight. Vince Russo's really racking up those numbers just to try and get back at Bradshaw.
All right, let's keep it going to, in some ways, one of my favorite parts of the night. Marvelous Mark Marrow was up next and on his way to the ring with Miss Jacqueline. And by God, Jackie was looking especially amazing here. I can't blame Marrow at all for getting a face full of it in the middle of the ring there. Just as the crowd got going with a Sable chant, Jackie got on the microphone. And I can't tell you the last time I heard her on a microphone, but I am sorry to report that Miss Jackie wasn't that great. In fact,
better than Sable.
Only a little better than Sable.
A little bit.
Speaking of horrible on the microphone, though, Sable came out at the top of the entryway with a mic of her own. Somebody needs to find whoever gave that to her and slap them.
The Jackal.
Yeah. This whole exchange was a bunch of thinly veiled innuendo about Marrow's manhood and Sable and Jackie's bodies, all delivered in the worst possible tone of voice it could possibly have come in. Marrow was moderately entertaining, jumping around behind Jackie and just acting like a jackass. But that's about it. It came down to a challenge from Jackie, though, a bikini contest at the fully loaded pay-per-view. Sable responded with, "Don't just blow it, show it."
Ugh.
And things folded up from there. We got the JVC Kaboom of the Week, which was for what feels like the second time Mankind getting thrown 16 feet off the top of a steel cage through the Spanish announce table. That's it. A whole lot of talking here. Ryan, don't balk at this segment. Talk at this segment. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you like that?
No. I'm done. I quit. This was just bad all around. Jackie, yeah, I agree. I didn't exactly remember how she was on the mic, but she was probably worse than I remembered in my head. But we do know at least she's a good in the ring, so she has that up on Sable. And unfortunately, I guess we haven't buried Mark enough. Now we're going to make fun of his soft cock here, saying that he can't get hard. And that sadly Viagra didn't exist back when Sable was with him. So his career wasn't buried quite enough. Let's just rub it in there. We end learning that we're going to have a bikini contest between Sable and Jackie. And I guess that's more appropriate than having Sable wrestle. So at least she's going to be showing off what she's good at.
Yeah, the two girls on the mic was not good. The content itself was fine, but it's just the delivery of it was terrible, and it's just basically just bad Jerry Springer shit that they're trying to do. But we can insult their microphone abilities all we want, but yeah, this is a build-up to Sable taking a couple of passes with a paintbrush on her boobs, and that's what we're building up to. So it doesn't matter. They can be shitty on the microphone. It doesn't matter because people are going to lose their shit over what happens in a couple of weeks for this bikini contest.
The moment they said it, I, in my head, already can see both of their outfits.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah. And saying that at least Jackie is a good wrestler, like I get what you mean by that, but Luna was a good wrestler too. It doesn't matter. Wrestling skills do not matter anymore.
Not in 1998. No.
All right. No, it just keeps going.
Speaking of good looks,
it just keeps going. Let's go to our next match. Val Venis defeats Dustin Runnels by disqualification in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Dustin got jobbed out hard here in every way. But at the very least, the white t-shirt and jeans look is better than whatever the fuck he was doing before.
Slightly. He's got those fucking bright white knee pads on over the jeans.
At this point in my notes, they hadn't... I'll get to it. Val Venis made a somewhat funny joke about scoring more times in Beaver Stadium than Joe Paterno, which I was a little bit confused about because I don't think Jopa ever played in Beaver Stadium to score. He coached people that scored.
You're splitting hairs here now, dude.
His team is scoring.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the Beaver reference and don't think too hard about it.
Yeah, okay. Here's where I took back what I said earlier about Dustin looking better because of the white knee pads over denim jeans. It's one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever seen. We didn't get to see his knees during entrances, first of all, because he was already in the ring. He got jobbed out. And they also gave him the least amount of screen time possible, and that was from the waist up at the beginning of this. Edge is still out in the audience. Really feels like we're back to being mercilessly edged with him because he's got nothing going on. Just as Val Venis was about to teabag Dustin Runnels, Kaientai came out to attack Val. That drew the disqualification. Yamaguchi-san came down with Mrs. Yamaguchi-san to extract some kind of revenge here. Kaientai held Val down while Yamaguchi-san got on the mic and butchered the English language as Mrs. Yamaguchi-san watched in stoic silence. But Yamaguchi-san did have to drag her away once things were done, as she couldn't take her eyes off of poor Val laid out in the ring. And that's it. Last week, I was wondering about Dustin's Christian gimmick and Val and Yamaguchi-san. As it turns out, the only setup that was happening here was Dustin was giving Val a reason to get in the ring so that Yamaguchi-san could come out.
To be a jobber.
Jobber.
That was a setup for him to be a jobber a week later.
Ryan, what did you have on this match and its aftermath?
That Dustin Runnels is a jobber. Those knee pads, when I saw those fucking knee pads, I said to myself, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, who backstage? Him, the fucking dress person,
his
director,
wife.
Vince McMahon, his wife, fucking anyone. Who saw that and was like, oh yeah, that's a good look. Go out there. That looks fantastic.
Wasn't Terry Runnels like a stylist before she became a valet?
Yeah,
like
apparently a CNN stylist or something, right?
Yeah.
A makeup artist, yeah.
Whatever she was, she should be fired from if she let fucking Dustin Runnels walk out there with a pair of jeans on with those fucking bright white knee pads pulled up over. And then he gets that, I guess the knee pads are there so he could fucking pray in the corner. That was stupid as fuck too. Man, poor Dustin Runnels. I really like the guy. And I hate having to rag on him week in and week out. But what they've done with him for the last 6 months is pretty unforgivable. And it makes me hate him. Not him the person, but the character. But this was just a job out. This was a setup for Val and Kaientai. I loved Yamaguchi-san butchering the English language when he told Val, no more hello babies or ladies. that brought a tear to my eye. And then we ended with Yamaguchi-san's wife with her eyes locked on the big Valboski. So we all know where that's going to go. So that's exciting, but I did not remember that Dustin's carcass was used as a stepping stone for this story.
Yeah, the thing that's odd about the Dustin Runnels situation is that it's been going on for several weeks and just going nowhere. It seemed at first when, you remember weeks ago when he took the burn barrel and burned all of his gold dust stuff, it was like, oh, baby, we're going to get something different here in a couple of weeks, but that was several weeks ago, and I don't know where they're going going with this, but they need to get there fast. Val Venis, again, he comes out and cuts a great promo about Beaver Stadium. There were two women on camera that just looked mortified when he was cutting his promo, which was hilarious. And the Kai and Tai situation to Yamaguchi-san and his wife, I think it's very well done so far. Val Venis is a goofball character, so there's going to be goofball stories to go with it, and that's what we're building up to. And I like that she's got eyes for Val right now. I think everybody's doing a pretty good job telling that story. Including commentary, by the way, because they're pointing out everything that's happening, helping build up to it.
Yeah. And let's not forget Mrs. Yamaguchi-san ain't that hard on the eyes either.
That she's not.
All right, next up we got a view of King Mabel in the ring. Apparently, he accepted Ken Shamrock's challenge.
He is hard on the eyes.
It's tough to take them all in your focal vision there.
Yeah, you need a panoramic view just to get from end to end. That took us into our next match. Ken Shamrock defeats Mabel by submission in 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Can one of you guys just remind me real quick, was Mabel a good performer in the ring?
I thought he was one of the best big mans ever, right?
Yeah, if you like broken orbital bones.
Yeah, and no selling and slow butchering botches of moves.
Almost killing Diesel.
He still sucks. And that's all I've got on this bullshit. Joe, what do you have?
Yeah, this was as horrible as you would expect. Basically, at the end of it, it's just a way to display Ken Shamrock's roid raging that he does so well. I almost wonder if this was, since Ken Shamrock destroyed Mabel here, I wonder if this was an apology to the fans for 1995. Especially knowing it was a one-night thing with Mabel. It's like, maybe this was an apology. Like, hey, we're going to squash this guy and we're sorry. I don't know.
I don't have a ton more to add because it was terrible, but I am thankful that it was solely to use Mabel as a jobber. He came in here, didn't really get too much in, gets the ankle lock put on him, and immediately gives up. And then after that, Shamrock just starts pummeling Mabel's face. So he just got humiliated here. So I'm not upset about that, but who the fuck's idea was it to bring Mabel back?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. Maybe he was just in town. He was
Hey, you guys need a hand tonight? And they're like, since you're here, I guess we could work you in somewhere.
He's the new Captain Lou Albano. All right, so next up, Mr. McMahon and Paul Bearer came down next. I chuckled when Vince gave Kenny the thumbs up as he passed him on the ramp. But then I became concerned when Vince went to join commentary. But then I was encouraged when the glass broke and Stone Cold Steve Austin came out, and then slightly concerned again when Austin joined commentary. And Austin and Vince immediately started squabbling like an old married couple, with lines like Vince saying, "Why do you always have to be that way?" as we went into our final match of the night. The Undertaker defeats Mankind by pinfall in 2 minutes and 17 seconds in kind of a triple threat match to become the #1 contender for the WWF Championship. Entrances hadn't even finished yet, and I was already really annoyed with Vince and Austin arguing back and forth at commentary, because Vince isn't good at it. Austin is one thing, but Vince, there's a reason why we don't want him on commentary, especially with talent. The Undertaker wasn't showing up, though, whenever they were announcing him, which prompted Vince to get up and get in the ring to talk to ring announcer Tony Schmel, with Vince forcing Tony to call The Undertaker chicken shit.
I popped hard for that.
So the solution was that this would become a no DQ, falls count anywhere match between Kane and Mankind, both of which had shown up. Mankind grabbed a mic and stated that he refused to fight Kane, which is probably a good idea considering Mick's been guarding that shoulder ever since the King of the Ring. I don't know if you guys noticed it or not, but he doesn't have a whole lot of range of motion there.
He's favoring it, yeah.
Mankind ended up sitting next to the ring stairs, so Kane went over, picked up a steel chair, and just fucking blasted Mankind in the face with it. Kane then threw Mankind into the ring and though this is where things started to get a little funny, pinned Mankind in the Undertaker style, crossing Mankind's arms and doing the hair flip. And I started to think, oh shit, are we getting swerved? But then I noticed that the pin was happening opposite the hard camera. And I was like, that's Kane, though, because he's not doing anything for the camera. That's his, MO right now. But, of course, it really was The Undertaker. We got swerved. The Undertaker jumped up, pulled off the mask, looked at Austin, and made the throat-cutting gesture. Austin stared in disbelief. JR screamed that The Undertaker was now the #1 contender as we faded to black. I'll start by saying that I liked the swerve, even though it's got a ton of plot holes in it, but much like the rest of this episode, this was anticlimactic for me. I'm starting to think that despite those really hot few months we had, I may need to start lowering my expectations. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a pessimist, but for the time that we spent with this story, the payoff was decent, but not at all what it was promising to be. Ryan, what'd you think of this final match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
I have to say, as everything unfolded, we, had all of the theater, if you will, of the build-up for this episode. Mr. McMahon comes down, joins commentary. Stone Cold comes down, joins commentary. Those two guys start bickering. We get all the entrances. Paul Bearer comes down. We're putting everything together, all the long entrances to get everything built up. And then when The Undertaker didn't come down and it looked like this was just going to turn into Kane and Mankind, and then Mankind's refusing to fight, I felt disappointed. I felt like, shit, is this just going to end in them saying nothing is going to happen? We get no payoff, but we did get that Undertaker swerve, and they got me. I remember that The Undertaker once dressed up as Kane and fooled everyone, but I did not know it was going to be right here. So they swerved me. And then at that point, I went, that's why he's got on the double sleeves, so you can't see all the tattoos to give away that it's Undertaker, not Kane. But everything else about it, he was moving like Kane, he looked like Kane, similar size. It was believable. And that swerve really saved the ending to me, especially because that's how it ended. We see it's The Undertaker, he pulls the mask off, and like a good mystery show or something, it fades to black right then,
Dun.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Right. Yeah. So I really liked the ending. I thought they saved a lot with that swerve, but I felt like I was getting disappointed that whole build up until finally that big reveal. So I thought it worked.
Yeah, I mostly enjoyed this. The only thing I didn't really particularly like was the commentary, which mainly Vince and Steve Austin. Vince just can't help himself. He has to constantly slip into his cartoony commentator voice when he does commentary, and it's just not good. It's pulling away from that Mr. McMahon character a little bit. But man, when Vince went in there and made Tony Schimmel call The Undertaker chicken shit, I completely popped. That was totally unexpected. That was almost like the Vader I'm a big fat piece of shit thing for me. I was caught off guard with that, and I loved it. And as far as the match, this did pretty good things, I think, for the slow storytelling that they've been doing. Mankind basically is slowly becoming a babyface. He had his King of the Ring match, which put him over. And now he's showing sympathy. He didn't want to fight Kane. So he's defying Mr. McMahon, too, at the same time. So he's becoming a babyface slowly, and Undertaker is slowly becoming a heel.
Yeah.
I like where they're going with it. I like how they're doing it. They're not in a rush because Steve Austin is your champion. He's extremely over right now, so there's no need to rush any kind of stuff like this. But they totally got me with the swerve, and I think that a lot of that is the result of Glenn Jacobs and how well he has sort of taken on The Undertaker's mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool to see. Completely got me. I never saw it coming, so I really enjoyed this.
Yeah. The thing about Vince is he has to respond. And so Austin will say something, and one of the many strengths that Steve Austin has is that, we'll say 97% of what comes out of his mouth is usually on point and clever. Vince McMahon, on the other hand, he just talks. and he responds, and half the time it sucks and it's terrible and it doesn't make sense. It's like weak insults and weak comebacks that just, like, Vince, you're making yourself look like a piece of shit here, or sound like a piece of shit.
Yeah, it's like unscripted bickering.
Yeah, you would do so much better to just keep your mouth shut and do the gulp or look pissed off, or...
He's doing the, I know you are, but what am I?
Yes. All right, so we faded to black. Let's take it on over to highlights and lowlights. Joe, why don't you take that first?
I have to say, this was not a particularly great episode of Monday Night Raw, but for me, for my highlight, I'm going to go with this last match. I just thought the storytelling in general was really good in the ring. And my low light, there's so much to pick from here, but I guess I'm going to go with the DOA and Paul Ellering situation. It's just, it's not fooling anybody.
There wasn't a lot to pick from for highlights, but we both ended on the same thing. I went with specifically the Undertaker reveal. That I popped my ass off for that swerve because they tricked me. They got me. That was cool. Low light, I'm right there with you too. DOA versus Headbangers. Enough said there. I don't really need to elaborate.
I'm going to differ on both of these with you guys. My highlights, really, really hard to pick. I didn't see too many in this episode, but I did end up going with Brakkus. My highlight was Brakkus in the Brawl For All match, because the first time we got to see him, he looked like a fucking jabroni, and I loved it. I loved it.
Got the fucking shit kicked out of him.
I loved it.
I'll give you that.
Talk about poetry. The low light, I had to go with the whole episode because it felt like I was getting edged, like ton of promise.
And you actually got edged at one point.
Yeah, twice. It was
so ineffective to show him in the crowd. I don't understand that.
Especially when he doesn't have a match. Like, if it's right before a match or something, okay, that's something, but...
Oh, there he is. Who cares?
Ton of promise, almost no delivery in this episode, so that's my low light. Joseph, I don't suppose you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around July 6, 1998 for us?
I do. There is some pretty good news here this week. Did you guys notice anything missing from this episode? Can you think of anything that was surprisingly missing from this episode of Monday Night Raw?
DX.
You are correct.
Wow.
Can you guess why?
They were off filming a
they were in
segment
detention.
in Atlanta.
Nope. This was the episode with the DX parody of Nation of Domination.
And that's why the episode was an hour and 29 minutes, too. It was about 5-6 minutes short.
Okay.
Which, to me, the highlight of that was Jason Sensation doing his Owen Hart impression. So it's probably on YouTube. I'm sure people can look that up.
Oh, it definitely is, yeah.
But yeah, that was on this episode of Raw. Something huge happened over on Monday Nitro, too, on July 6th. Can you guys guess what that was? A historical moment on Nitro.
No, I don't know.
It marked the TV debut of Judy Bagwell. No, in all seriousness, that did happen.
I thought you were serious.
No, what happened was Goldberg defeated Hulk Hogan to win the title in the Georgia Dome on July 6th.
Okay.
So, big moment there for WCW in this ratings war. Bill Goldberg, 31 years old, less than 10 months after making his televised debut on September 22nd, was given the WCW title by Hulk Hogan before the largest crowd in the history of the company. The fourth largest crowd for pro wrestling ever in the United States, took place at the Georgia Dome and garnered without question one of the biggest pops in the history of the business.
Yeah.
This was essentially a result of panic over the TV ratings.
And my understanding, though, from this point on, Goldberg will go on to be known as one of the best ring workers ever.
It's funny you say that. Dave Meltzer goes on to say, so will Goldberg be WCW's answer to Steve Austin, or perhaps this generation's version of Hogan or Flair? Or will he be this year's answer to Sting or Luger or Jim Hellwig, the guys who were supposed to be the next big thing, but when in the position, their flaws became too evident and it just never worked? I think we can go with the latter on that one.
We know Bret Hart loves him.
Yes. Yeah. Big fan.
Man, that's so funny that's part of the news. Like, I'm pretty sure I remember people at school talking about that the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Goldberg winning the title. I didn't watch it, but...
The insult now is people insult Eric Bischoff for putting that on free television, and he always has to defend his decision in doing that.
I can understand why he did it.
Yeah.
He's losing in the ratings.
It was ratings, and they actually announced the week before that the match was going to happen, so they didn't mention it that night. They built up to it by saying it was going to happen. So they sold a bunch of tickets, and they had a bunch of people tuning in. So mission accomplished there.
Yeah.
I know you guys want to hear more about what Dave Meltzer thinks of the Brawl For All.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially Brakkus.
He says that after 2 weeks on television, the experimental Brawl For All has become a major topic of conversation. The tournament appears on paper to be a forum to get Dr. Death Steve Williams over as a contender for Steve Austin in the fall, so that he's already on to that. One leading WWF official used the term mixed reactions to describe the overall company feeling on the tournament.
Mixed.
The idea behind the tournament is to add a new dimension to television that would get people talking and draw ratings. Meltzer goes on to say, realistically, the only person with something to lose would be Steve Williams, since he's being brought in with the opportunity to be a headliner. If he were to be exposed like Mark Marrow, he would be dead in the water because he won't be able to be promoted as a legit tough guy. You must be a fortuned future.
Yeah.
He's telling the future here, so that's pretty wild.
The one thing he didn't correctly pick, though, is even winning the tournament doesn't really guarantee that your career doesn't get ruined.
The reason why it got ruined was because the right guy didn't win. But
I guess, yeah.
Dave Meltzer's saying that word on the street is Mick Foley did not suffer any broken bones in his Hell in a Cell match, but he has not been able to eat any solid food since. And
jeez.
And is in a lot of severe pain, both sitting and standing. Speaking of people getting their careers ruined, the remaining contract the WWF has with Butterbean will likely be used at SummerSlam to have him team up with Sable to go up against Mark Marrow and Jacqueline. And that is all this week. So lots going on in the wrestling world on July 6th.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add at gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most contemptible. See, I said I'd come back to it.
Yes.
Monday Night Raw Review Podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on July 13th, 1998, with matches featuring Vader, Bart Gunn, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.